Now, I told y'all earlier I was gonna bring somebody new in the G-Unit. I might have a new signing, I might not. You see, I got the whole G-Unit here. We're gonna get it going.
But I was like, we like Jimmy better than you anyway, Cam. Then you gotta watch and see how he responds. Oh, you really like that. Hey, give me this. Get me Jimmy. Yeah, tell him we want him. We want you at the show, Jimmy.
I don't change my pivot, and everybody knows that. I mean, as you can see, I would not be here if I did anything else but be me.
A beef that never really exploded but never died either. A chess game that's been playing out for over a decade between two of New York's most interesting characters. This was 50 Cent and Jim Jones. Now before we get into this, let me make something clear. This isn't your typical hip-hop beef. We are not talking about two artists throwing shots on wax and calling it a day. Nope, this is deeper. This is about power moves, street politics, and two completely different philosophies about how to make it in this game. But let's set the scene first. Picture New York in the mid-2000s. 50 Cent is sitting on top of the world. Get Rich or Die Trying has made him a household name. G-Unit is everywhere. Clothes, shoes, video games, you name it. The man is not just an artist, he is a corporation. And then you've got Jim Jones holding it down with Dipset, Harlem's finest. The Diplomats are doing their thing, creating their own wave, their own style. They've got the streets locked, the fashion game on point, and they're making noise, serious noise.
I stood at home here on the zone flicking the channel, watching how the gangsters do it.
Now here's where it gets interesting. The internet went crazy saying that this beef started with some diss tracks or some social media back and forth. But nah, this goes way deeper than that. This is about two different approaches to the game, two different mindsets about what it means to be successful in hip-hop. Let's break this down piece by piece. First is the street politics. Joseph Jim Jones Guillermo was a Harlem native and a key figure in the Diplomats. Dipset, led by Cameron, which was one of the most influential crews that dominated early 2000s New York rap. Jim Jones has never been shy about his blood affiliation. In fact, he's worn it like a badge of honor. He's always repping his set, throwing up signs, and bringing his crew everywhere. Now word is, 50 Cent wasn't feeling that at all. There's this famous story about him rolling up to a studio session with Jay-Z, 20 deep with nothing but bloods. Now, think about that for a second. You're going to meet one of the biggest executives in the game and you show up with an army? That's a statement.
They were portraying that East Coast were fake bloods, and they were just putting on the act, and I knew we wasn't.
But here's where 50 Cent comes in. 50 Cent's whole philosophy is different. This is a man who survived 9 shots and came to a realization. The old way of doing things, that isn't it. Instead of joining a gang, he created his own movement. G-Unit wasn't just a crew, it was a brand, a business, an empire.
Yeah, don't gotta let no runs you can't see. Say what?
And this right here, this fundamental difference in how they move, it is the root of everything. 50 Cent sees Jim's gang affiliation as a limitation, a chain holding him back. Meanwhile, Jim sees it as staying true to his roots, keeping it real. But wait, it gets better. Let's talk about the power play that really kicked this whole thing into high gear. Picture this, it's the height of G-Unit's dominance, and 50 Cent makes a move to sign Jim Jones. Now, on the surface, this might seem like a simple business decision. G-Unit was signing everybody who was hot at the time. But let's think about this strategically.
Hey, what you know? What you know? It's your man Jim Jones right here.
50 Cent is a master strategist. This is the same man who destroyed Ja Rule's career, who went to war with Inc. and won. You really think he just wanted to sign Jim Jones because he liked his music? Nope, this was chess. Even though nothing is proven, out in the streets, the story is that this was part of a bigger plan to dismantle Dipset from the inside, break up one of the strongest crews in New York by picking them off one by one. Classic divide and conquer. But here's where it gets really interesting. Jim Jones didn't take the bait. He stayed loyal to Dipset, to Cameron, to the movement they built. And this decision, this right here, it's what really cemented 50 Cent's lack of respect for Jim. See, in 50 Cent's mind, loyalty to a crew over personal advancement is weakness. Remember, this is a man who's all about individual success, about building your own empire. To him, Jim passing up the G-Unit deal wasn't about loyalty, it was about fear. Fear of standing on his own. But let's flip this for a second. From Jim's perspective, this wasn't about fear at all. This was about integrity, about staying true to your people. In the streets, loyalty is everything. And Jim Jones, he's a street dude through and through.
I know who I am. I'm very comfortable in my skin. I stand 10 toes down on everything I believe in. I don't change my pivot, and everybody knows that.
This is where the story takes another turn. Because 50 Cent, he's not just going to let this go. His diss tracks, social media antics, and public takedowns of rivals have made him one of the most feared figures in hip-hop. But when it came to Jim Jones, the disrespect took on a more psychological angle. He starts playing mind games. There's this infamous interview where he talks about tricking Jim Jones, trying to manipulate him into turning against Cameron.
But I was like, we like Jimmy better than you anyway, Cam. Then you gotta watch and see how he responds.
Think about how disrespectful that is. For someone who prided himself on his street credibility, being painted as a pawn in 50 Cent's strategic game was a major insult. You are basically saying this man is so simple, so easily manipulated, that you could trick him into betraying his own people. That's not just disrespect, that's degradation. And this right here is where the beef really starts to simmer. It's not just about business anymore, it's personal, it's about respect, or rather, the lack of it. Let's fast forward a bit. Over the years, this beef has taken many forms. There have been diss tracks, interviews, social media posts, but what makes it different from other hip-hop beefs is that it never really exploded into all-out war. Instead, it's been this constant undercurrent of tension, this ongoing battle of philosophies.
Very unfortunate that all us had to go down this way, and everything plays out on the internet the way it's playing out and shit like that.
On one side, you've got 50 Cent, the ultimate businessman, a man who turned getting shot 9 times into a marketing strategy, who took his street credibility and leveraged it into a multi-million-dollar empire, who believes that true power comes from independence and business acumen. And on the other side, you've got Jim Jones, the street soldier, a man who's never compromised his identity for success, who believes that there's honor in loyalty, that your crew is your family, and that some things are more important than money.
That shit just takes time out my day from making money. I know who I am. I'm very comfortable in my skin. I stand 10 toes down on everything I believe in.
But here's what makes this whole situation so fascinating. Neither of them is necessarily wrong. They're just coming from completely different worlds, different value systems. Think about it like this. 50 Cent is like a corporation in human form. Everything is about strategy, about maximizing profit, about winning at all costs. Jim Jones is like the last of the street soldiers, holding on to a code that many would say is outdated, but that he sees as sacred.
I've had numerous amounts of calls to the point that I kind of stopped picking up my phone because most people are calling with references to everything that's going on, whether it may be.
And this right here, this fundamental difference in how they see the world, it's why this beef will never truly end. Because it's not really about them as individuals, it's about what they represent. 50 Cent represents the new way of doing things, the corporate takeover of hip-hop. The idea that street credibility is just another asset to be leveraged for profit. That loyalty is great, but money is better. Jim Jones represents the old school, the streets, the idea that there's still honor in the game, that loyalty to your people matters more than personal gain, that some principles are worth more than a check.
It seems like people don't look at the playing field, and it seems like whenever I react to anything, it's taken more seriously than anything else, and it turns into what we have now. And I haven't even said nothing.
And here's the thing, this clash, it's bigger than just 50 Cent and Jim Jones. It's about the evolution of hip-hop itself, the tension between keeping it real and getting real paid, between street values and corporate success. Now, before we continue breaking down how this beef evolved, we need to take a step back and look at something crucial, the New York hip-hop landscape that shaped both these men. Picture New York in the late 90s and early 2000s. The city that had given birth to hip-hop was going through changes. The raw, grimy sound that had defined the 90s was giving way to something new, and both 50 Cent and Jim Jones were products of this transition period. Let's start with Queens. 50 Cent came up in South Jamaica, Queens, an area that had already produced legends like LL Cool J and Run DMC. But 50's Queens was different. This was post-crack era Queens, where the old street hierarchies were crumbling and new power structures were emerging.
Push your legs, I walk around, gun on my waist, chip on my shoulder, top bust a clip in your face.
Growing up in this environment, 50 Cent learned early that adaptation was key to survival. He saw how the old street crews were being dismantled by law enforcement, how the traditional ways of making money in the streets were becoming more dangerous and less profitable. Meanwhile, up in Harlem, Jim Jones was experiencing a different kind of education. Harlem has always been about style, about flash, about doing things with flair. This was the home of the hustlers, the smooth talkers, the fashion innovators.
but y'all know the order. Told them 10 rosés and a few cold waters.
And this is crucial to understanding their different approaches. In Queens, 50 learned to be tactical, to think several moves ahead. In Harlem, Jim learned the importance of loyalty, of maintaining relationships, of keeping your word. Now talking about something that often gets overlooked in this beef, the role of their early mentors. 50 Cent was initially mentored by Jam Master Jay of Run DMC. Jay taught him the business side of music, how to structure songs, how to think about his career strategically. This was a different kind of street education, one that emphasized longevity over immediate gratification. Jim Jones, on the other hand, came up under Cameron's wing. Cam was already known for his unorthodox approach to the game. He wasn't just about the music. He was about creating a movement, a lifestyle, a whole aesthetic.
And start mountains. When the hell we start bouncing? We stash ounces. Make a cat start clowning.
These different mentorship experiences shaped how both men would approach their careers and ultimately their feud. Talking about something else that's crucial to understanding this feud is their different approaches to brand building. 50 Cent's approach to building the G-Unit brand was corporate from day one. Everything was trademarked, everything was strategic. Everything was about building long-term value. This man wasn't just thinking about hit records, he was thinking about exit strategies.
I felt like we was just in it. I felt like 50 was making the money and we was just in G-Unit, you know what I'm saying?
He created G-Unit Records, G-Unit Clothing, G-Unit Books, G-Unit Films, and television. Each venture was carefully planned, each move calculated to build upon the last. This wasn't just a record label, this was a conglomerate in the making. Now look at how Dipset built their brand. It was more organic, more street level. They created a movement through mixtapes, through fashion, through slang. They weren't just selling music, they were selling a lifestyle, a way of being.
I stood at home here on the zone flicking the channel, watching how the gangsters do it.
The pink fur coats, the bandanas, the whole diplomat aesthetic. It wasn't focus grouped or market tested. It was real, it was authentic, and it worked because it came from a genuine place. This brings us to another fascinating aspect of this feud, their different approaches to conflict resolution. 50 Cent's approach to feud has always been systematic, almost military in its precision. He doesn't just come at his opponents with diss tracks, he studies their weaknesses, their business relationships, their revenue streams. Then he attacks on multiple fronts. Just look at how he handled his beef with Rick Ross or Ja Rule, or even Floyd Mayweather. It's never just about the music, it's about dismantling their whole operation. Jim Jones, though? His approach to feud is more traditional. It's about respect, about face-to-face confrontation, about handling things the way they've always been handled in the streets.
I don't change my pivot, and everybody knows that. I mean, as you can see, I would not be here if I did anything else but be me.
And this fundamental difference in how they handle conflict, it's another reason why their feud has never been resolved. They're literally speaking different languages when it comes to conflict resolution. Also talking about something that's rarely discussed in this feud, the role of their respective inner circles. 50 Cent's inner circle has always been small and carefully chosen. Looking at his relationship with Dr. Dre and Eminem, these aren't just musical collaborators. These are strategic business partners, each bringing something specific to the table.
Like that. It's like, yeah, you're 50 crazy. I don't know what made you want to go upside down.
His core team, people like Tony Yayo and Lloyd Banks, they're not just artists on his label, they're shareholders in his vision. They've been with him from the beginning, but their relationships are structured, contractual. Compare that to Jim Jones and the Dipset structure, it's more like a family than a corporation. The relationships are more fluid, more emotional, more complex, and yes, sometimes more volatile. Look at how they handled internal conflicts. When G-Unit had issues, it was handled like a corporate restructuring. When Dipset had problems, it was like a family feud, messy, emotional, public. But here's where it gets really interesting, their impact on the next generation of artists. The feud between 50 Cent and Jim Jones has created two distinct blueprints for success in hip-hop, and every young artist coming up today has to choose which path they're going to follow. You've got artists like A$AP Rocky who clearly studied both playbooks. He maintained his Harlem identity while building a corporate empire. He managed to bridge the gap between street credibility and high fashion in a way that neither 50 Cent nor Jim could have imagined. Then you've got someone like Tekashi 6ix9ine INE who tried to play both sides and ended up learning the hard way that you can't fake authenticity in this game. And this brings us to another crucial point, the role of authenticity in hip-hop today. See, both 50 Cent and Jim Jones are authentic in their own ways. 50's authentic to his vision of success, to his belief in strategic thinking and corporate advancement. Jim's authentic to his streets, to his people, to his culture. And in today's hip-hop landscape, where everything is so carefully curated and marketed, both these approaches have their merits. Let's talk about their evolution as businessmen. This is where it gets really interesting. 50 Cent's transition from rapper to business mogul has been well documented, from his early vitamin water deal to his success with Power on Stars. He's consistently shown an ability to spot opportunities and capitalize on them.
Only show in premium cable, period, that Power's behind is Game of Thrones.
Okay, but
That's why I started it early.
Why would you move?
But what's less discussed is how Jim Jones has also evolved as a businessman. He's invested in real estate, launched successful clothing lines, and even ventured into cryptocurrency. The difference is in how they approach these opportunities.
700 Bitcoins in 2014.
Wow.
That'd be $71 million today.
Guy's a genius.
50 approaches business like a corporate raider, aggressive, strategic, always looking for the biggest return on investment. Jim approaches it more like a community builder, looking for opportunities that benefit his whole circle, not just himself. Bringing us to the present day. Where does this beef stand now? How has it evolved in the age of social media and instant communication? These days, the beef plays out differently. 50 Cent has mastered the art of Instagram trolling, using his platform to throw subtle jabs and not so subtle shade. He's turned social media into another weapon in his arsenal.
Woke up, I look at the computer say, Floyd said, T.I. Nelly 50. I'm like, what did he say me for? Nelly your first baby mama, Melissa, then took your fiance. Say that.
Jim Jones, meanwhile, has maintained his approach. He addresses things directly when needed, but generally stays focused on his music and his business ventures. He's adapted to the new landscape without changing his fundamental approach. But here's what's really fascinating about where this beef stands today. It's become less about them as individuals and more about what they represent. When young artists look at 50 Cent, they see a blueprint for corporate success in hip-hop. They see someone who turned street credibility into boardroom power, who transformed his image from street rapper to entertainment mogul.
When I clean up, I'm Curtis.
Can you show me the difference? Can you show me, like, who? This is Curtis.
This is Curtis.
And here's 50.
When they look at Jim Jones, they see something different but equally valuable. They see someone who maintained his integrity while still achieving success. Someone who proved you don't have to choose between street credibility and business acumen. And this right here, this is why this beef matters. Because it's not just about two men who don't like each other. It's about two different approaches to success in hip-hop. Two different value systems, two different ways of moving through this game. So what's the lesson here? What can we learn from this decades-long tension between two of New York's most interesting characters? Maybe the lesson is that there is no one right way to make it in hip-hop. Maybe the tension between these two approaches, corporate strategy versus street loyalty, individual success versus collective advancement. Maybe this tension is what keeps hip-hop honest.
My solo album took off so big that I just brought them with me. So it was clear that it was me creating the opportunity for everybody else in the crew.
Right.
I wish it would have been Yayo. If he would have been 50 Cent big,
Right.
then I would have been running the whole thing.
Because at the end of the day, both these men have achieved success on their own terms. They've both left their mark on the culture. They've both influenced the next generation. While time may have softened the edges of their rivalry, the underlying tensions remain a lasting part of their careers. The echoes of their feud continue to resonate in hip-hop culture, serving as a reminder of the intricate power dynamics that govern the industry. Ultimately, their unresolved tension is a testament to the complexity of hip-hop rivalries, more than just beef, but a battle for legacy and influence. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the beef itself, but what it represents. The ongoing conversation about authenticity versus advancement, about staying true versus selling out, about keeping it real versus getting real paid. These are questions that every artist has to answer for themselves. And thanks to 50 Cent and Jim Jones, they have two clear examples of how different approaches can lead to success.